Hello. Welcome to my studio. My name is Hannah Bennyhood. I'm an artist and architect, and this is my little podcast that I call One Take Hot Take. The whole idea between this video series is just to have a laid back conversation about a different topic that affects us artists and designers. And I film it in one take, so it's like thinking out loud. Am I even going to agree with everything I'm about to say? Maybe not. Feel free to let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say on this topic. And so today I thought I would talk about the artist's dilemma. And there's two that kind of spring to mind that I've been thinking about over the past couple of days. Number one, making money, which picks up quite well on from the first episode. And the second is about social media. And I have been thinking about this kind of can't live with it, can't live without it idea. And so let's have a chat about it. Let's first start with money. So I started my career as an architect. I was a full-time architect, and I did art as a hobby on the side. And slowly, I went from doing part-time art, part-time architecture, and now I'm a full-time artist. And it's been really interesting to see that kind of the changes that happen within my practice once I become more reliant on my artwork for money. And I think I always had this idea in my mind that quote unquote success as becoming a full-time artist would have meant that I had more creative freedom. When in fact, I think I was probably my most creatively free when I wasn't being paid to make art at all, because that was when I could truly, really do whatever I want. And what's ended up happening is that I make a certain amount of money from my art projects that have clients that I stand by and I love. But what I really love doing, and what I think is some of my best work, for example, is a project called Girls of the Light, which I ran last year for the first time, which was a project where I projected animated women in dark spaces around Tottenham to activate them and make them feel more safe. And I knew I wouldn't be able to find a client for that project. And so I used the money that I made from the other artwork to fund that project. And I feel like that is now something that I'm thinking about more and more, and something that I want to do. I've decided now at least once a year I'm going to fund my own art project, because of the freedom that I have when there is no strings attached through getting paid. And also, as I've progressed further, my budgets have become bigger, which again is absolutely fantastic. But again, more money, more problems. It's a song for a reason. And those projects that have big budgets have so many people attached to them. They actually, even though you would think they have the most possibilities because of the budget that you have to work with, it actually also has the most constraints. So a goal for me, and why I have even started this YouTube channel, and in part why I'm trying to build an audience online, which we'll also come back to, is for me to think about how can I personally fund more art projects. If I think they spawn some of my best work, how do I make it so I have like 50% of my time doing client work and maybe 50% of my time doing passion projects? It means that I need to make my full-time salary out of 50% of the time, or I need to somehow also make money from my passion projects. And I think lots of artists kind of stumble into this once they realize that they have to make money and a living from their artwork. I suppose it would be a lovely world if someone could just give you a bag of money and say, off you go, do what you want. But that's not really how, well, my world works. Unless you're rich, then you have that ability. But if there are artists that I kind of look up to who kind of manage to do that, for example, CJ Hendry, I never know, Henry or Hendry, you know, the woman who does the really hyper realistic pencil drawings. But then it also means she gets to do these like incredible exhibitions. Last year I went to her one in London with the church with the petals falling down, and it was so amazing. And the fact that that was self-funded really inspired me to think of a way of how I can self-fund my own projects. Will I ever reach that scale? Probably not, you know. And it's been interesting to, if you study her career, to watch how she has done it, because she has done it by basically her work sells to like the ultra wealthy, at least first of all, and that is how she has then gone on to like fund her other projects, and her husband does the same. So I'm sure they are like, each of their businesses help each other out, you know. So the way that I have thought about, well, what could my version of this be? How could I potentially do this? It's kind of similar, but not that scale, kind of through like a crowdsourcing model, or what is usually spoken about as the 1,000 true fans model. And the idea behind the 1,000 true fans is that you don't need, you know, millions of followers, or you don't need people with super deep pockets to like buy your artwork. But if you could have like 1,000 people who are willing to spend £100 a year on your work, maybe that could be in various guises. It could be like a print, an event, something downloadable, and something else. Like, you know, if there was 1,000 people that could do that, for example, well, that's £100,000. That's your income. But obviously getting to that point where you genuinely have 1,000 true fans is actually harder than it looks, which moves us on to social media. And social media, I think, is so important for artists and has paved, is that the verb? A new opportunity for artists to make money. But simultaneously, the market is so saturated online with professional artists, hobbyists, content creators, whatever it might be, to be able to stand out and to have a long-lasting, deep relationship with an audience of, say, whatever, 1,000 people who are willing to spend however much on you per year to make an actual viable career is actually a really difficult thing to do. Like, it's possible, so many people have done it, but it's not easy. And I feel like I've seen quite a few people get trapped in this, in a little bit of success in social media, and have kind of not really realised how long it takes to make something sustainable. So for example, I saw today on TikTok a guy saying that he had his prints, this print of like, I think it was a garlic bulb or something else, go viral. And he was just this small little business owner. He had a part-time job doing something else, and he was just selling his art on the side, and suddenly, boom, it blew up. And he was like, oh my God, this is my moment. And he couldn't keep up with orders. He ended up leaving his job, and he started selling these prints full time. His boyfriend ended up helping him, and I think he lost his job or something. And, you know, then the algorithm or the audience got either bored or they like moved on. And, you know, he suddenly has this business with hardly any income coming in. And he was kind of tricked via social media into thinking he had suddenly become successful. And I've said time and time again, and what I live by, is that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. Like, there is no, look, okay, I know, I'm gonna reframe this. Some people hit the creative lottery. Some people get spotted straight out of university and suddenly make it. But the majority of us just grind it out slowly. And it's not sexy. It's not like, here's 3 easy steps to like becoming a full-time artist. You know, it's not. It takes a long time. And I think people need to kind of have a little bit more patience when it comes to actually building up their art career. I saw another person as well talking about these little ceramic fortune cookies that he was making, and they went viral, and he was like, oh my God, all the orders came flooded in, and he totally miscalculated how much time and how much packaging and how much material it would take to like sell like 1,000 of these little fortune cookies that suddenly went viral. And I think sometimes people also aren't really thinking about the way, the realities of scaling a business, and how you can actually make that something that's possible to continue and possible to actually be financially viable, because it can feel so good. I can remember when my first ever artwork I sold to a stranger, the first ever art piece, I sold it for £900 on Etsy, and I couldn't believe it. I was ecstatic. I was a full-time architect at the time, and someone bought it from Mexico. He lived in Mexico. I never shipped any artwork in my life. I was like, oh my God, how am I even going to do this? On the thing I said I'll ship it within 3 days. I honestly, my honest plan, because it was quite a large piece, right, in like a framed with glass. My plan, if anyone was to buy it, which I never thought they would, if anyone was to buy it, I was going to drive it round to their house. That was my plan. And someone bought it who lived in Mexico. Anyway, I ended up having to build this crate for it and then getting it like shipped by airmail. I think in the end, the shipping cost me something like £300 to ship it to Mexico. Framing it cost me something like £250. And I think I had spent making the artwork something like 3 months. So I was like, oh my God, I'm ready to leave architecture. I'm selling artwork for £900 a pop. And it wasn't until my husband actually like sat me down and was like, Hannah, would you like to calculate the profit and your hourly rate you are getting from this? And it was only when I did that I realised I was earning something like, I don't know, £1 an hour or something. I suddenly realised that, I can't leave my job. In fact, I am nowhere near being financially stable. And, you know, since from the moment that I solved that one thing, I think it might have been somewhere between 6 and 8 years that I actually became a full-time artist. I think also social media, I think, is such a skill, in fact, and most people don't actually talk about it like that, but I think it is a real skill because you are providing value for people. There's so many things, so many other people that someone could follow, so many other things other people could watch. Why should they invest their eyeballs with you? You have to provide value for people. You can't just be shipping anything out on social media and expecting people to feel like connected to it. And again, sometimes I think this can feel a bit confusing because I saw Mr. Bingo, the artist Mr. Bingo, who I love. I have a couple of his artworks actually. He put this thing up on social media and it was a graph, and it was on one side was like happiness and on the other side was like 2 options of making art. And one was like, you know, getting told what to make by companies so they can just sell stuff, and it was like happiness small. So basically working for someone else making your art, happiness small. And then it was like making whatever you love and people buying it, happiness large, like, you know. And I saw this graph and I was like, sure, like, yes, I agree with that. However, it's not as simple as that. You can't just make what you love and assume people are going to buy it. And I think, even though I agree with the sentiment of what he was saying, I feel like actually he's kind of underplaying how good he is at making people feel seen with his art that he creates, and how much value that has. It's not, maybe those things in a Venn diagram overlap. What he loves and what his audience loves overlap, and that is how he is able to make money from what he creates. But you can't just do one thing without the other. You can't just make what you love if your audience doesn't also love it, because then that doesn't make money. You know, if I think of the artworks that I have bought from Mr. Bingo, because I bought 2 of his. One was the Fuck the NHS print, which he made during COVID when everyone was clapping for the doctors. You could, if you could buy a doctor a print that said "fuck the NHS," and I bought one and I said, you can send it to any doctor you want, but my husband's a doctor and he's working crazy hard. I would love it if you send it to him. And he sent it to Jake, which was amazing. And then the other print I have from him, it's actually original, it's not a print. It's a collaboration with him and Wilfred the sculptor, and it says ego on one side, anxiety on the other, and it's a Venn diagram, and then in the middle is artist. And I just saw, when I saw that, I felt so seen. I was like, that's just how I feel. Half of me is just this massive ego and half of me is this ball of anxiety, and like right in the middle is like where I make my artwork from. So he might be making things that he loves, but it's successful because it has value to me as well as to him. And he's also actually quite fantastic at marketing. So he has this thing called, can I even say this on YouTube? Travel CUNT bingo. I think that's what it's called anyway. And he has this bingo card where you can kind of spot people traveling in ridiculous ways, whether it be like unicycle or, doing a wheelie or Boxer Kids. Anyway, whatever. Now, whenever I see someone traveling around London in a ridiculous manner, I think of this artist. It's like genius. It's genius marketing. And I'm sure I don't know how conscious he is of it, but I think it's not as simple as just doing what you love, basically. I think it's also about doing what your audience loves as well. And so then I think that kind of brings the artist dilemma back again, because you're constantly having this push and pull of like, what do I love to do and how are people responding to it? What do I love to do and how are people responding to it? I'll post this, it bombed, but I loved it. I post something I didn't love that much and it did well. Now, should I continue doing that stuff that I don't particularly like? Or should I only do stuff that I love but it hasn't found its audience? Do you believe that eventually you will find the audience for the stuff that you love? Fingers crossed. How long would that take? A year? 5 years? 10 years? Who knows? And I think this is the kind of stuff that us artists constantly grapple with. And I don't have an answer for all this stuff. I just think it's really interesting for us to consider and think about and talk about, because I think so much of these kind of conversations maybe happen behind the scenes, but less so out in the open. So yeah, that is my thoughts for the day. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please do let me know, and I would love to hear your comments on the dilemmas. What kind of artistic or designer dilemmas do you have? Let me know, maybe I'll talk about them in a future episode. But yeah, thank you for hanging out for me, especially if you got this far. And I look forward to seeing you soon. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Lots of love, see you soon.